Welcome back, everyone. We are live from the Women's Health Conference at the Delta by Marriott here in South Fargo. And I'm joined now by one of the keynote speakers, Eliz Green. And I want to tell people a few things about you. But number one, I found it surprising that you want to talk about stress and you get excited about stress.
I am ridiculously excited about stress.
Okay, but can I start with this? I did read that you have survived a heart attack at the age of 35 while 7 months pregnant with twins.
Yes.
So you know a little something about stress.
A little bit. Actually, I often joke that that day was very stressful for everybody else. I had really good drugs.
Oh, lucky you. Okay, so what do you talk about when you go to a women's health conference like this? You've already been up on stage one time, and you said you talked about stress. Physically, how it affects us?
Right.
What do you tell people?
So one of the things I find fascinating about stress is that it causes a chemical reaction in our body. So when our bodies sense stress in our environment, it pumps cortisol into our systems, which makes our heart beat faster and our blood pressure go up. It even makes our blood stickier, which is all good if you're in an emergency. The idea, though, is once that thing passes, cortisol is supposed to come back down again, kind of goes back to normal. But when we live our lives up here at high stress nearly all the time, that cortisol level doesn't have a chance to come down, and eventually it will impact your heart. And that's the physical part that we talked about, is controlling our risk factors for heart disease and then making sure that we're getting the cortisol out of our system so it doesn't impact our heart.
Do you think overall as a population we are stressed right now?
So according to my study, most people, more than 70% of people are reporting that they're stressed at work, which is what we looked at, because face it, we spend most of our time at work. 70% of people said that they are stressed half of the time or more. And 30% of people said that they were stressed nearly all the time.
Wow. So how can you combat stress and not, it's easy to say it.
Right,
it's not easy to do it. Just stop stressing.
Yes, knock it off. All you need to do is relax. One of the things that I find challenging about addressing stress is oftentimes we think it is a one-size-fits-all proposition. Like, you just need to meditate. So there's some people where if you make them sit still and concentrate on their breath, it makes them more stressed because that's not what they need. They need enough distraction to stop thinking about whatever is causing that stress reaction to continue to happen. So that's one of the, we're going to talk about in the afternoon. Are you a border collie or an iguana? And I actually have a quiz on my website that you could find out if you're a border collie or an iguana. So iguanas need more stillness, more quiet, more contemplation to kind of detach from that stress. Border collies, they need to occupy themselves so they're not chewing on things mentally all of the time.
That makes sense. And you kind of moved into it. You said this morning you talked how stress can affect you physically, but this afternoon it is how stress can affect you emotionally.
Right. And a lot of it is that emotional trigger that I can't quite let it go. And it just keeps triggering and triggering and triggering, keeps you up at night, that sort of thing. So we're going to talk about that. And then we're also going to talk about how do you make sure you have a good quality of life regardless of the unavoidable stress. Because sometimes it just is there. We can't really get rid of it. But we can be safe and live well and work well in our own little bubble of contentment.
Do you have to start with identifying? Because you just said what keeps you up at night. And it could be a number of different things for different people.
Well, and one of the things stress does is it creates this crisis of urgency. Everything seems urgent. And if we don't filter down and really look at what are the things that we really need to be paying attention to, what are we going to spend our time, energy, and attention on, and maybe let some of the other things go that don't always need our time, energy, and attention.
So are you going to share some strategies?
Yes.
Okay. Can you give us kind of a preview of?
So one of the things I talk about is creating an emotional hazmat suit. So how do you create a barrier between your life and your work and all of the things in your environment that might cause stress? Part of that is really identifying what's truly important, what's the focus in the middle, and then asking questions about, is that serving what's important? What happens if something really goes bad, and walk through the what ifs so that if that happens, you're prepared. A lot of what keeps us up at night is that uncertainty, and to walk through, well, okay, if the worst happens, well, what do I need to do to make sure that this bubble is okay?
We all deal with stress, men and women.
Absolutely
But we're
true.
at the Women's Health Conference. Are you focused more on how women deal with stress? And do we deal with it differently?
So what's interesting about that is in my study, the same things stress men and women. There is no gender difference in terms of what causes our stress. How we react to that stress is different. Women do tend to sort of grab onto it and keep it. Men really can compartmentalize in a very large generalization. The iguana border collie is a better model, but women do tend, especially if you have children at home, your time is so much more precious. So if you have something taking your time that you're mad about it taking your time, that does tend to cause some stress.
Can you talk, I kind of mentioned this, it's the Women's Health Conference. Why do you feel it's important for women to come to a conference like this and then, go to a speaker like you and have strategies?
So one of the things I find fascinating is that women who maintain positive relationships with other women are 30% less likely to have heart disease.
Wow.
Because in a lot of ways, we handle our stress in a relationship sort of way. We want to talk about it. Again, it's a generalization, but there are studies to show that if we hang out with other amazing women, it's good for our health. So going to an event like this, very important.
I think you've been good for my heart just today. And people can still come to the health conference. What time do you go on stage again?
I go on stage again at about 11.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Eliz, for, I got to look at that because it's
I know, it's
Eliz,
odd.
like email in my notes. I appreciate your time.
Oh, it was such a pleasure.
It's great to have you here in Fargo.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.